The applause hit me before the words did. My mother lifted a stack of documents under the wedding lights and said almost proudly, "We're giving them our home." The room erupted. My sister cried, my father beamed, and I sat there, fingers locked around a glass that suddenly felt heavier than it should. No one looked at me. No one remembered who had kept that house alive for 5 years. I told myself to breathe, to smile, to stay still. But the moment my mother lowered those papers, something shifted, quiet, sharp. And it wouldn't stay quiet for long. I used to think helping my parents was just something adult children did. No spotlight, no praise, just duty folded neatly into the rhythm of everyday life. 5 years ago, when my father's hours were cut, and my mother's joints stiffened so badly she could barely grip a steering wheel, the mortgage became a weight they could no longer lift. I didn't hesitate. I opened my laptop, logged into my bank, and set up a recurring transfer. The first month felt heavy. The second felt necessary. By the 6th, it had slipped into the background like the hum of the refrigerator, constant, unnoticed, always there. Every 30 days at almost the same time, my phone buzzed with a short notification payment processed. No thank you calls, no discussion. Sometimes my mother mentioned how lucky they were that things hadn't fallen apart yet, and I nodded, not reminding her that the luck had a name and a routing number attached to it. Long before I started paying bills, the pattern had already been set. When I graduated college, my parents handed me a card at breakfast. A thin envelope, inside a folded bill, $50. My mother said they were proud of me. My father squeezed my shoulder. I didn't expect more. I'd learned to expect little, to make peace with being the steady one. 2 years later, when Vanessa graduated, they held a backyard party with lights strung between the trees. There was a shimmering cake, rented speakers, relatives spilling across the grass. And at the end, my father dangled a pair of keys in front of her pinched between 2 fingers so they'd catch the sun. "Your car's in the driveway," he said. Everyone cheered. Vanessa cried into his chest. I clapped with everyone else, pretending not to feel the difference settle inside me like a stone. She was always the light, the laughter, the promise. I was the planner, the fixer, the quiet one, meals cooked, rides offered, mistakes cleaned up before anyone noticed. My mother used to tell people I was low maintenance as if it were a compliment, as if needing nothing meant being nothing. The older we got, the clearer the imbalance became. Vanessa drifted through new hobbies, new jobs, new boyfriends. My parents called her every morning and every night. When she forgot deadlines, they smoothed things over. When she overspent, they wired her money. When she cried, the world rearranged itself around her tears. But when I quietly covered their mortgage, when I rearranged my budget, when I passed on trips, closed small indulgences, I didn't dare justify. They didn't brag about me. They didn't ask how I was managing. I became the invisible support beam of a house that wasn't even mine. There are moments you don't realize are turning points until years later. Moments so small they slide past without sound. For me, it was that day in the backyard watching Vanessa lift those keys high while everyone cheered. Something settled in my chest then. Not anger, not yet, but awareness. That was the day I learned exactly where I stood in this family. 2 months after the wedding, the world felt like it had finally gone quiet again. I had almost convinced myself the house announcement was just another wound I could tuck away with the rest. Then Vanessa texted me an invitation to dinner. Casual, she wrote. Just us. Ethan and I pulled up to the house, her house now. The porch light glowed warm against the evening sky. Through the window, I saw my mother adjusting a new set of cream-colored curtains, replacing the blue ones she'd loved for years. Vanessa's voice floated from the kitchen, bright and effortless, like she'd been living there forever. The table was already set when we walked in. Pot roast, fresh rolls, a game playing softly on the TV in the next room. My father greeted Ethan with a cheerful clap on the back, then turned to me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I sat where they gestured between Ethan and my father, the same way I always had. Except this wasn't their house anymore. It wasn't mine either. It was theirs, the chosen pair. We ate through small talk, Hawaii stories, paint colors, Vanessa's plans for the backyard. She talked about installing a fire pit like she'd always dreamed, her hands moving in wide, excited circles. My mother watched her, the way people watch the sun rise. When the plates were cleared, my mother folded her hands and glanced at my father. A signal. My stomach tightened. "We wanted to talk to you," she began, gentle, practiced. "Your father and I have been thinking about our next steps." My father nodded. "Since the house is theirs now, we need somewhere to stay. Somewhere peaceful." My mother exhaled softly, as if easing into something inevitable. "We've decided we're going to move into your vacation house." She said it like announcing weekend plans, not a question, not a request, a decision. Silence pressed around me. Vanessa kept her eyes on her plate. Ethan shifted beside me, waiting. I placed my fork down, aligning it with the edge of the plate. My hands were steady. My breath was slow. Inside, something familiar cracked open. Not shock this time, just recognition. They had already chosen where I fit. They always had. "No," I said. A single syllable, quiet but solid. My mother blinked. "What? You're not moving into my house." The room tilted into stillness. My chair scraped lightly as I stood, leaving the warmth of the table behind. The chair stayed there when I walked away full a moment earlier, now unmistakably empty. The drive home was quiet, but not the brittle kind that threatens to shatter. It was the kind that settles into your chest, steady and sure, marking the exact moment when something inside you finally stops bending. Ethan didn't ask what I was thinking. He never does. Not right away. He just kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting near mine, close enough that I could reach for it if I wanted. I didn't. Not yet. I needed the silence more than I needed comfort. When we got home, I hung my coat, stepped out of my shoes, and walked straight to the bathroom. I turned on the faucet, cupped cold water in my hands, and pressed it to my face. My reflection stared back, calm, almost too calm, eyes dry, jaw set. The kind of stillness that comes after years of swallowing storms. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I simply reached for the towel, blotted my face, and walked to my desk. The lamp cast a narrow circle of light across the surface. My laptop sat in the middle, waiting. I opened it. The screen blinked awake. First step, block their numbers, not out of spite, out of necessity. Every cycle with my parents followed the same pattern boundary. Backlash, guilt, apology, amnesia. I couldn't afford that loop anymore. Contacts, select, block. The clicks were dull, almost soft, a clean cut disguised as routine. Next, security. I opened the app for the vacation house. A map pin, a thumbnail image of the front porch. System status armed. I tightened the settings, new passcode, two-step verification, stricter, motion alerts. I removed their old access. Then I set up notifications to come directly to my phone and Ethan's no delays. After that, I opened a folder labeled Documents. Inside, 5 years of mortgage payments. Not detailed spreadsheets, just simple logs, monthly confirmations, transfer receipts, brief notes I'd scribbled in the margins when my parents called needing help again. I didn't read them. I didn't need to. The dates alone were enough. They formed a pattern, a shape, a truth. I highlighted the folder, compressed it, and saved it somewhere easy to reach. Not to use against them, just to keep myself honest. To remind myself that none of what happened was in my head. Ethan leaned against the doorway, watching me quietly. "Do you want to talk?" he asked. "Not yet." He nodded, pushed off the doorframe, and disappeared into the living room. No sighs, no hurt feelings, just space, exactly what I needed. I opened another tab, a simple spreadsheet, not revenge, inventory. Every financial obligation I had carried for my parents. The months I covered when they couldn't manage. The times I rearranged my own schedule, my own budget, my own plans. Not to tally debt, to witness it. Line by line, the numbers appeared. Clean, unemotional. When it was done, I closed the sheet. I didn't save it. Around midnight, I walked to the window. The city lights glowed in the distance, blurry and soft, like someone had smeared gold across the horizon. Cars passed below a steady hum, rising through the glass. A reminder that the world keeps moving even when you finally stop. Ethan joined me, placing a mug of warm tea on the windowsill. His fingers brushed mine. "You okay?" he murmured. "I think so." We stood there for a long time, not speaking, just breathing in the same slow rhythm. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt anchored. The next morning, I woke up with a clear head. I showered, tied my hair back, and dressed for work. My movements were deliberate, each one marking the shift happening quietly beneath my ribs. On the way out, I paused at the drawer near the door. I opened it slowly. Inside a ring of keys lay still the spare for my apartment, my office, and near the center, the vacation house. I picked up the vacation house key. Cold metal, sharp edges, a simple piece of shaped steel, but it carried 5 years of responsibility, silence, and erased effort. I closed my hand around it, holding it until the imprint pressed into my palm. Then I placed it back in the drawer gently, almost ceremonially. At work, everything felt sharper. The sound of keyboards, the low hum of printers, the soft murmur of conversations across cubicles. I logged in, opened my email, and worked through campaigns with a focus I hadn't felt in weeks, maybe months. Around noon, my phone buzzed a message from an unknown number. I didn't open it. I deleted it. Boundaries only worked when maintained. Time passed in clean, quiet segments. Afternoon light spilled across my desk. The day moved the way days were meant to move forward. When I got home, Ethan was on the couch reading. I sat beside him, leaned back, and closed my eyes. My chest loosened. My shoulders dropped. The quiet inside me didn't feel like emptiness anymore. It felt like space. A boundary isn't a wall. It's a shape, a line, a choice. And for the first time in my life, I had drawn one for myself. That night before bed, I checked the security app again. Armed, stable, still. I turned off the lamp, letting the room fall into darkness. This time, I wouldn't fix what they had broken. The call came on a Wednesday morning halfway through a meeting. My phone buzzed once, then again, the vibration skittering across the conference table. I glanced down, expecting a calendar alert or a message from Ethan. Instead, an unfamiliar number filled the screen. I almost declined it until a second vibration followed, stronger, more insistent. I excused myself quietly and stepped into the hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. "Hello." A pause. Then a steady official voice. "This is the local police department. We're calling about your property outside the city. We have 2 individuals here who claim to be your parents." I pressed my back to the wall, the cool air pushing against my spine. The officer continued. "They used a key to enter. The alarm system flagged it as unauthorized. We need confirmation from you." There it was, the final line of the thumbnail arriving not as a metaphor, but as a fact. I closed my eyes. "They don't have permission to be there. Understood. Do you want to come to the property? We can wait. I'm on my way." I found Ethan at his desk, lifted my coat from the back of his chair, and said only, "They're at the house." His eyebrows tightened, but he didn't ask questions. He grabbed his keys, and we left. The drive out of the city stretched long and pale under an overcast sky. The farther we went, the quieter it became. No traffic, no voices, just the soft sound of tires on asphalt and the occasional shift of wind through the trees. I kept my hands folded in my lap, thumbs pressed together to stay calm. When we turned onto the gravel road leading to the vacation house, I saw the police cruiser first. Its lights weren't flashing. It sat still like a witness waiting. 2 officers stood near the porch, and on the steps, huddled beside 3 mismatched suitcases, sat my parents. My mother looked up first. Her eyes widened, not in guilt, but in relief, as if I were the one who had the power to undo the consequences. "Thank God," she said, rising quickly. "Tell them it's fine. Tell them we're allowed to be here." The officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, are these your parents?" "Yes. And they do not have permission to stay on the property." "No," I said, my voice steady. "They do not." My mother's face crumpled. "Isabella, don't do this. We had nowhere else to go." "You had a home," I replied. "You gave it away." My father stood slowly brushing dust from his jacket. "We didn't break in," he said, annoyed. "We used the key you gave us." "That key was for emergencies," I said, "not for moving in." A silence stretched thin. The officer cleared his throat. "We can escort them off the property. If you want to press charges for trespassing, we will file it." My mother gasped softly. "You wouldn't." For a moment, the world slowed, the trees stilling in the wind, the gravel settling beneath our feet, the cold air tightening between us. I could hear my own breath. I looked at her, really looked, at the disappointment she wore like armor, at the expectation that I would bend the way I always had, at the certainty that I would fold because I was the responsible one. But I wasn't bending anymore. "I'm not pressing charges," I said quietly, "but they cannot stay here." Relief flickered across her face too quickly. The officer spoke again. "We'll take them to the station for a few hours. They can arrange transportation from there." My mother turned on me, then not with gratitude but with fury. "You're unbelievable. After everything we've done for you," Ethan stepped slightly in front of me, not as a shield, but as a reminder I wasn't alone. The officers guided my parents toward the cruiser. The suitcases remained on the porch like abandoned thoughts. A locksmith's van rolled up soon after. He nodded politely, replaced the locks, handed me the new keys. Metal cool, solid. I pocketed them. When the cruiser pulled away, dust lifted from the ground, drifting into the late afternoon light. The house behind me was quiet, untouched, exactly as I had left it. I locked the door myself before leaving. The click echoed cleanly. Justice doesn't need noise, it only needs clarity. The morning after the police call, the world felt strangely weightless. I woke before the alarm, the apartment still dim, the city not yet fully awake. For the first time in a long time, my chest didn't feel tight. The air moved in and out smoothly as if something inside me had quietly unlocked overnight. I made coffee and stood by the window, watching the early light wash over the buildings. The city looked softer in the morning edges, blurred colors muted everything a little less demanding. Ethan joined me, his hand brushing mine as he reached for his mug. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Later that day, my cousin Jessica called. She spoke carefully, aware she was stepping into a minefield. She told me my parents had tried to return to Vanessa's house, that Vanessa refused to let them in, that they were now renting a small apartment on the edge of the city, my mother back to working full-time to cover expenses. I listened without reacting, not out of coldness, just distance, the kind that comes after years of carrying something heavy and suddenly setting it down. That evening, my phone buzzed again, a voicemail from my mother. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. She said they'd made mistakes, that they wanted to talk, that they hoped I could forgive them someday. I didn't delete it, but I didn't open it either. Some apologies need space before they can be heard. After dinner, I sat at my desk. I opened my laptop and pulled up the listing platform for rentals. The vacation house photos appeared: sunlit windows, clean floors, quiet rooms. It felt good to look at it without anger, just seeing it as mine, a place I could choose what to do with. I adjusted a few details, clicked list, and closed the laptop. When I turned off the light, the apartment settled into a soft hush. Not empty, just calm. Sometimes freedom isn't loud. Sometimes it's the absence of being needed for the wrong reasons. Boundaries aren't punishments. They're the quiet shape of self-respect, the line between what I carry and what I return. And once I finally drew mine, the silence that followed wasn't distance. It was freedom. If you've ever rebuilt your peace from the ground up, you're not alone.